For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. What does the imminent Supreme Court of Appeal decision on the spy tapes mean for the charges against President Jacob Zuma that were withdrawn?
My understanding is that in the Supreme Court of Appeal, they asked Zuma's counsel, Kemp J. Kemp, whether there was a reason to withhold this, and he basically conceded there was no case, so that they've got to make some arrangements about certain material that may or may not be withheld, but it seems inevitable that these tapes will be released. Now, it may be that the tapes have been tampered with. We don't know, because anything is possible in the South Africa of today. But I think it's important because when Zuma won the presidency of the ANC, he didn't become president when Thabo Mbeki was removed, and this was because he had hundreds of charges hanging over him. And it was at that point Kgalema Motlanthe became president of the country, you'll recall, sort of keeping the seat warm. And they set up a committee to basically suppress the charges. And the way that they set about suppressing the charges was that this committee, which had, I think, former Judge Heath, Sipho Seepe, and this chap Ngubane, who's quite a controversial lawyer, they somehow, or the legal team of Zuma, got hold of tapes from the intelligence people, tapes which was wiretapping, and this information showed that there had been conversations between former head of the prosecuting division, Bulelani Ngcuka, and Lennon McCarthy, and this discussion related to when they should bring the prosecution. Should it be before the Polokwane conference or afterwards? And they were saying, well, if you did it beforehand, it would be said to prejudice Zuma, and it was better then to bring it later. But in fact, the decision was going to be taken by Mshe, and Mshe had taken the decision independent of this discussion. Now, when Mshe got to hear of this, he called this press conference where he said this discussion was grossly improper and it offended his sense of justice and fairness, that they should be trying to time the prosecution in a way that would politically be to the advantage of Thabo Mbeki, etc., etc. Now, he therefore felt that this tainted the prosecution and that it had to be withdrawn. Now, members of the prosecution team included Wim Trengove, SC, although he was not a major player, and a chap called Billy Downer, SC. And they've analysed the reasons given by Mshe. And if this were to go to court after the tapes have been handed over, it's possible that the court will be asked to review the decision to withdraw the prosecution and to order them to reinstitute the prosecution, as happened with Mdluli. And the grounds will be along the lines that, on the one hand, the discussion between McCarthy and Bulelani Ngcuka didn't affect any decision which Mshe had made on the prosecution. He was not affected by that conversation. Secondly, the discussion that they had did not affect the integrity of the charges. The discussion only related to timing of the prosecution. When the prosecution would be brought, it didn't affect the hundreds of charges that Zuma was to face. No one, Mshe didn't say that was affected in any way, and they didn't try to affect that to touch that in any way. Also, when Chair gave his decision, he referred to a House of Lords British decision on a similar matter. But that decision doesn't support the decision that Chair made, because what that court decision held was that even if there were some irregularities in the process, it should be left to the courts to decide whether or not these had an effect on the integrity of the case. So all in all, the broad reasons given by Chair for withdrawing the prosecution don't seem to be valid in law, and the effect of withdrawing the prosecution is that Zuma said he wanted his day in court to prove his innocence. Now, all we have at this point in time is a series of charges that he never had to face. So his name has not been cleared, nor has it been proven that he was guilty. And many people believe that it's desirable that this be decided in a court of law, and that may be what the Supreme Court of Appeal, or let's say a future action following the Supreme Court of Appeal, will decide that he should face a court action.
Is it still possible for the prosecution to make this fail?
You know, we have a very serious situation in the administration of justice, but especially in the prosecution division, where there's disarray. The present director has been suspended. The previous director, Samalane, was held to be unfit for office, and the impression that people had when he was appointed that he was tainted, but he was appointed because the charges against Zuma were unlikely to be brought again by Samalane. So, and we also have now 3 or 4 members of the NPA who have been suspended. One of them, her qualifications are being questioned, and these prosecutors are going to be charged fairly serious charges. So that I think we have a situation where people have lost confidence in the prosecuting division. They've shown that cases where people have seen on television how Tatani was killed, somehow they fail to secure a case. There are a lot of these situations where the administration of justice is facing something of a developing crisis. There's also the question of the Judicial Services Commission being undermined by people going there just as sort of voting fodder, and the questions that are being asked seem to imply that if you are a human rights lawyer, it's undesirable to appoint you, because human rights lawyers tend to upset legislation or decisions of the executive. So in general, I think there could be undermining of that decision. It's possible nowadays, but there are a lot of judges on the bench at this moment who have the highest integrity, and let's hope that that will prevent something like that happening.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about corruption charges against President Jacob Zuma.